Welcome back here. It's from the bleachers. Caden Formaster and Mark Musgrave.
The voice you know.
Mark, we got a guest on the phone with us. It's been a while since we've had him on as well, so I'm really happy to have him on. It's, of course, your boy Q. So, Q, how's it going?
It is going, man. Fast and furious, right? Around Raider Nation right now, around the silver and black. A lot of things are going on. So, yeah, man, it's definitely been going. It's been fun, and basically got to keep our head on a swivel to see what happens next.
Yeah, we talked about earlier, hey, we'd love to have you on when things start happening, and, man, things are happening. First, Q, let's talk about the breaking news yesterday. I did not see this coming at all. Darren Waller being traded to the Giants.
Yeah, that was big, man. It really was. And it was funny. I was in a meeting when that news broke, and I didn't take my phone with me. And so I didn't see it immediately. And then all of a sudden, when I got back to my office and saw my phone, I had text messages, missed calls, had all kind of Twitter for notifications. And I was like, man, what in the world's going on? I'm never this important. And then I saw that Darren Waller was being traded to the Giants, and I thought, wow, that's big. And I'm like you. I didn't see it coming originally. I was like, oh, man, that was a shock. I didn't think that was going to happen. But then the more and more I thought about it, I said, you know what? It actually makes sense. There was so many reports and so much smoke out there a season ago that the Raiders were trying to trade him, and the fact that he almost got traded to the Packers when the Raiders acquired Devontae Adams, like that was the first little inkling that you heard. And then, you know, the whole training camp, he was in, he was out, waiting to get a contract, finally got a contract, then was in and out. And, you know, it just sounded like there was a lot of, you know, kind of off. Like he just wasn't fitting in. Not that he's not a great player, but it just wasn't fitting in with what this staff wanted to do. So, you know, the more and more I thought about it and the more and more I kind of went through the timeline in my head, I started to think that, you know what, it makes sense. Combine that with, you know, he's on the wrong side of 30. He's been injured quite a bit. He's only played 20 games the last 2 seasons. So it eventually made sense. But, man, originally when you see Darren Waller traded to the Giants, you're like, wait, what in the world? So, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, Caden and I we were talking about when these two words are in front of your name as an athlete, it's always a little bit scary. The when healthy, he is incredible. Right. And that's been Darren Waller the past 2 years, when healthy.
Right, exactly. That's the biggest thing. And so, yeah, I mean, dynamic player. He's an awesome tight end, awesome guy, right? I mean, I love the guy. I love the story. He's a guy that I'll always root for, you know, on and off the field just because I really respect him and what he's gone through. Again, his story is amazing. But at the end of the day, man, it's about winning games. And, you know, you can't win games if you're on the sideline. You can't win games if you're in the training room. And unfortunately for Darren Waller, he's been in the training room more times than not. And, you know, it's funny that the Giants almost didn't make that trade with the Raiders. They actually wanted a trade back or like a contingency if he plays a certain amount of games, then, you know, you'll get this or you'll get that. And the Raiders were going to just basically say, no, thank you. Never mind. We'll move on. And so they decided to go for it anyway. So the Giants are aware of his, you know, health concerns, and they're a little concerned as well.
Do you think it's a good move for the Giants? Do you think he's going to be helpful? Or, again, just because of injuries in the past, is that kind of where he's destined for?
Yeah, no, I think he's going to help them because they don't have a whole lot of weapons right now, right? I mean, and of course, again, we always have to say when healthy, how great he is. But I do think that for Daniel Jones, as they're trying to repeat what they did last year and actually have a good season from him, it's always good to have a good tight end like that that can go and make plays. So I think that he'll provide some juice for that offense. And, you know, you got Saquon Barkley in the backfield, so you know what he can do when has a really good run game along with that. I just think with the Raiders, there were so many different weapons to choose from that, you know, it was easy for him to get kind of lost in the shuffle. Even when he was there week 1 when they played in L.A. against the Chargers, you know, and it was the Devontae Adams show, and really Darren Waller didn't get targeted too much. You know, it's a different ball game for him. So I think in New York, as long as he's out there, he'll get targeted a lot and he'll be engaged a lot, and he'll probably provide some juice, right? I think they're going to still continue to add some weapons around him, but for right now, I mean, he looks like he's going to be the main attraction, and I think that that's something that he wants.
How is Josh Jacobs' attitude going right now? You know, he has the non-exclusive franchise tag. Now one of his buddies gets traded to the Giants. How's Josh Jacobs?
I think Josh Jacobs is good, right? I mean, I think that he wants to get his long-term deal done. I'm sure he wants nothing to do with the franchise tag. No player does. He told us at the Pro Bowl, hero turned villain if they hit him with the franchise tag, even though 99.9% of us knew he was going to get hit with the franchise tag. They eventually did. I think something's going to get worked out. I really do. I mean, they have till mid-July to work out a deal, a long-term deal. So I think that they'll get something done. If not, the franchise tag is $10 million. He was supposed to make $8 million on the fifth-year option. So he's getting a raise anyway. Unfortunately for him and every other running back in the league, he's a running back. And running backs don't have the value, the staying power as other positions, and it stinks. I hate that for him. And, just like Darren Waller, I'm a big fan of Josh Jacobs, the guy, the man. He's a heck of a dude. So, I always want the best for him. And I think, like I said, I think things will work out. But right now he's got to play the long game, and he's trying to get his money, trying to get his long-term deal done instead of having to play on the franchise tag. So we'll see how it shakes out. But at the end of the day, man, I think that Josh Jacobs will be fine.
Well, you say long-term. Now, the organization might have a different definition of long-term than Josh Jacobs does. Organization, I might see a 3-year. Is Josh Jacobs looking for a 5-year? I mean, he does play running back. I hope he has that realistic contract and long-term in mind.
I think what they're going to do is I think that they're going to probably front-load a contract, maybe give him like a 4-year deal, but it's very front-loaded, so he's getting the majority of his money. And at the end of the day, that's what these guys want.
Okay.
They want their guaranteed money, right? I mean, they're not really worried about, well, I got to play with this team for 2 or 3 years or whatever the case may be. They're just worried about trying to get their guaranteed money up front. So I think that that's how they're going to do this contract, is they're going to front-load it. And that'll make him happy, as opposed to just getting the $10 million on the 1-year deal. Probably get like I said, a 4-year deal where maybe 2 years, the first 2 years are guaranteed, and then the team has an option after that. But as long as they're getting that guaranteed money up front, that's all that they really care about.
So let's talk about quarterbacks for a second. So start with the former, Derek Carr. He moves on to New Orleans. Kind of break down your thoughts about that move for him and what that means.
I mean, I think it's a good move for him. He's familiar with Dennis Allen. He goes somewhere where it's, they're playing in a dome, playing in a division that's not the most difficult division. They have a really good, strong defense there. They have a good run game. I mean, I know Kamara's got some issues going on off the field, but I still think that they have a really good run game. And, again, like they said, he's familiar with Dennis Allen as the head coach. So I think it's a good spot for him. I mean, it'll give him an opportunity to go out there and do what he does. He's going to try to go win games. Of course, it's a very passionate fan base. So, I think it's a good landing spot for him. I mean, I don't wish him any ill will. I think it was time for him to move on. I think it was time for the Raiders to move on. Obviously they weren't getting to where they needed to go, and this fan base was getting frustrated, and they wanted something new, and this staff obviously wanted something new and someone that they believed in. So, they go and make the move for Jimmy G, and now Derek Carr is, the longtime guy from the Raiders now in New Orleans. And so, I think he'll have an opportunity to go out there and win some games. And again, in a division that's not the most difficult division, he should have an opportunity to thrive.
Yeah, and speaking of Jimmy G, you mentioned him. And again, for all of our listeners, we are talking to Q Myers at Your Boy Q254 on Twitter. You mentioned Jimmy G. Tell me a little bit about him. Josh McDaniels, him and Jimmy G are reuniting. Is this somebody that Josh McDaniels is going to trust a little bit better in the second half? We talked about earlier in the season what their second half downfall was, and you alluded to me or to us a little bit earlier that we don't know if Josh McDaniels and the coaching staff had the full trust in Derek Carr. Will he have that in Jimmy G?
I mean, I believe he will, because the familiarity is there. They know each other. He obviously knows the system from Josh McDaniels, and they know what Jimmy G is capable of doing. So I think that Jimmy will be able to go in there and provide, at least a steady ship as far as the, running the offense goes. My only concern with Jimmy G is the same concern that everybody else has, and that's just health.
When healthy.
The guy's yeah, exactly. Again, when healthy, that's the key right there. And that's never anything that you want to have to talk about or put in front of a guy's name, like you mentioned earlier when it comes to Darren Waller.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to find out how to keep him upright. They got to figure out how to keep him healthy. I don't know what they're going to do at the backup quarterback position since Jarrett Stidham's up there. I thought that would be a good 1-2 punch. Okay, Jimmy G and Jarrett Stidham, fine. If and when Jimmy gets injured, then Jarrett can go in, but he's off to Denver. So now they've got to make a decision on what they're going to do moving forward from the backup position, and that's interesting. But, I think they do have all the belief in the world in Jimmy. They have the confidence. It's their guy. they better be confident in them, right? They're bringing them in. They're the ones who chose to sign them, so it's not like they inherited them. They went out and made the decision to bring him in. So if they don't have confidence in him to open up the playbook and allow him to do everything that's in there, well, then that's 100% on them. So, yeah, I do feel like that they'll have more trust in him than they had in Derek Carr as he was still trying to learn the scheme. And, of course, players trying to learn the scheme as well. You saw multiple times. You saw Hunter Renfrow run into Devontae Adams. You saw Darren Waller run into Devontae Adams in the back of the end zone against Tennessee. I mean, there's a lot of times you saw confusion out there on the field. At least he'll be able to hit the ground running in training camp where he's not learning. He's just out there executing. Okay, go. And that's why a guy like Jacoby Myers has been brought in.
Yeah.
Just go out there and go. Don't try to learn. Don't try to think. Just go play. That's what they need is a bunch of guys that know what they're doing. And so, the fan base is getting upset because there's a lot of Patriot ties coming to Vegas and playing with Josh McDaniels and company. But that's what you do. You get guys that think the same way that you think, that perform the same way that you want to perform. I mean, you just get guys that are all on the same page. So if they bring all their guys in and they're all on the same page and they go out there and execute and they win a bunch of games, nobody will be upset.
Yeah.
Right now, like I said, the fan base is mad because it's all Patriots, but I said it on my podcast today. I don't care if a guy played in the southern tip of Africa, man. If he's going to go in there and play and know how to win games, that's all that matters to me. I don't care where they came from.
Hey, the last 20 years, the Raider way has not worked. The Patriot way has. So I'm okay with it as well, Q.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the thing about it, and a lot of people are upset by that. And this staff hasn't made the greatest decisions. They've had 1 year.
Yeah.
Everyone was comfortable with giving John Gruden all the time in the world, and before that, it was Jack Del Rio. And before, I mean, it's just like the carousel has gone around and around and around. And so I try to be, the voice of reason, the voice of calm, and not try to lose my mind off of every single little move that happens. But, I mean, the fan base has been a long time, man. There's a lot of frustration built up, so they're sounding off. And I think that for the Raiders, man, they can't get to the draft fast enough, because if they come out of the draft with some pretty big-time players, I think the fan base will be a little bit more excited and fired up. But right now, they're just kind of on edge, not knowing what's happening next.
So you actually bring up something that I wanted to ask you anyways, is what does this look like now going into the draft, now that free agency is starting to hit, players are moving along? I know there was some question from some Raider fans saying, do they just go for a quarterback in the draft? Well, they picked up Jimmy G. What does the draft now look like for the Raiders?
Well, that's going to be interesting. That's what I'm excited about. I mean, right now they have 12 draft picks, and we all know that you don't need 12 guys. You don't need to select 12 guys. 12 guys you're not going to sign. So I think it gives Dave Ziegler an opportunity to move up and down the draft as he so pleases, right? I mean, it gives him an opportunity to really do whatever he wants and start to target some players. I do believe they'll come out of the draft with a quarterback, but I do believe they'll come out of the draft with a bunch of defensive studs, too. And that's what they need. I mean, the defense has been atrocious for a long time. It's Max Crosby and everybody else. So they need to make sure they come out of the draft, I think, with, 4 or 5 starters. Really, I mean, and I know that that's asking for a lot, but they need to come out of 4 or 5 starters, right? One being a quarterback, and I'm not saying that he's going to start day one, but at some point they have to have the confidence that he could be the starter. And then you have some other guys on the defensive side of the ball. So Max Crosby, when he goes out there and takes the field in September, he's actually got some people that he believes in with him. A starting corner, starting linebacker, maybe a defensive tackle, right? Maybe a safety. Just look, you pick it. I mean, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole defense needs help. So you pick the position. They need it. So I'm good with it. I just think that it's going to be a fun, exciting time to see what Dave Ziegler does because, man, he only had a limited amount of capital a season ago, and he was able to actually do pretty well. I thought it was, he did a pretty good job, and he didn't get his first pick till round 3. So I think if he takes his first pick around 7, where they're at right now, then there's going to be some good things that happen, some good talent added to the roster. And at the end of the day, that's what the Raiders need. They need talent, and more talent.
You mentioned the defense, and they did go out and get a couple of defensive free agents. You got corner Brandon Faison and safety Marcus Epps. Are those two going to step in and be immediate starters and helpers, contributors on the defensive side of the ball?
I think Epps is going to be immediately. He's a guy that played just about every snap defensively for the Eagles the season ago, and he's not a guy that's very good in coverage from the safety position, but he's good up in the box. He's good near the line of scrimmage. He's really a good Jonathan Abram, right? A guy that's a short tackler. He does really well when it comes to stopping the run. He just could be that guy, and the Raiders play a lot of 3 safety looks, right? So he's not necessarily going to be the last line of defense like a Trayvon Merrick or a Deron Harmon, but he could be added into the mix and be on the field. And like I said, be that short tackler, be that guy up near the line of scrimmage. He went over 1,000 snaps last season for the Eagles. So he's out there. He's reliable. I like that. I think that was a pretty low-key signing where a lot of people don't understand what the move is. I think that's a really good move. Brandon Faison, he was with the Raiders in 2021, went to the Colts with Gus Bradley, and I was actually surprised that he returned to the Raiders because I thought he fit better in Gus Bradley's scheme, but apparently the Raiders see something in him that they like. I know he's physical at the line of scrimmage, and that's what Patrick Graham wants. I think he's in case of emergency break glass guy, like he's insurance just in case they don't come out of the draft with their corner that they want, because they do know that they have to address that position. So that's a guy that could be, a fill-in. He could be, versatile. He could do a few different things. So, I mean, just an added piece. I don't think he's going to be someone that they rely on a whole lot. But like I said, they just got to get some bodies in there that can compete and somewhat know what they want them to do.
So as a Raider fan yourself, of all of the free agent signings that has already happened, which one are you most excited for and why?
That's a really good question. Man, I don't know, because Jimmy G, I mean, I'm not going to lie, Jimmy G was not at the top of my list as far as the quarterbacks go. I kind of knew he was going to be the guy, but wasn't excited about him. I think Epps is going to be good defensively. I would have to say Jacoby Myers. They added him on the offensive side of things. I think he's going to be a really good contributor. He had over 800 yards last year for the Patriots, and last year he was with the Patriots, and McDaniels was there when had a better season than that. So I think that he's going to be a big-time contributor. He's a guy that, again, going back to they want guys that think like them and go out there and perform the way that they want them to. He's going to be able to slide right in, be a really good contributor across from Devontae Adams. He can play inside. He can play out. It's going to be interesting to see if Hunter Renfrow is around next year. He has a lot of money that becomes guaranteed tomorrow. Or no, not tomorrow, Friday, excuse me. So that's going to be interesting to see if he's still around or if they decide to go ahead and trade him. If they do trade him, then, okay, now you got a different narrative. If you don't, then you got a combination of Hunter, Myers, and Devontae Adams, and that's a pretty salty little wide receiving room. So I would not have a problem with that. You've seen what the Patriots have been able to do with smaller wide receivers in the past. So I think that there's a lot of things to like about the addition of Jacoby Myers.
Well, let's go outside of the silver and black now. Talk to me about some of these other free agent signings, some of them that maybe surprised you, some of them that excite you. Baker Mayfield to the Bucks.
I think Tremaine Edmonds going to Chicago was a big deal. Got a nice little payday, and it's very rare that you see a free agent that's only 24 years old. Like, he'll be 25 when the actual season's going on, but he's been in the league 5 years and he's only 24. So you got to give him a lot of credit. He's really improved a lot from what he did last season. He was able to improve in coverage. So I thought that was a really good pick. I got to give the Bears a lot of credit. They went out and spent a lot of money because they had a lot of money to spend. They also made the moves to trade back all the way to number 9 and get that draft capital from Carolina, and also pick up DJ Moore. So I think that they've done really well. You got to look at San Francisco and see what they did, bringing in Hargraves. Big-time deal, but they're a team that they can afford to say, okay, we're going to go spend all this money on this guy because, well, he's going to continue to add that pressure that we have on the defensive line. So I like what San Francisco did. And then Denver, I think Sean Payton is being sneaky good about what he's doing, going out and bolstering up the offensive line, working on maybe, making some other moves to bring some more weapons in to give Russell Wilson an opportunity to succeed. And I think this is a big year for Russell Wilson. If he doesn't succeed this year, I think that Sean Payton goes back and says, okay, I know this is a move that you guys made for this guy, but I don't think that this is my guy. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. He ain't going nowhere. So we'll see how that dynamic works. But if anyone could really humble Russell Wilson and kind of get him right, I think it'd be Sean Payton. So I think what Denver's doing as well is making some good moves. But I always caution everyone and every fan base, don't get fired up when your team is winning in March. And as you guys know, the Raiders have won March many years. Many years they dominated March, and then when September came, nothing. So I get excited about seeing the moves and thinking about what can happen, but I also don't say, okay, just because that team won in March means that they're going to be hoisting a Lombardi at the end of the day, because that rarely ever happens.
That's fair enough. Fair enough. One last question before we let you go, Q. We have college basketball coming up. Everyone loves college basketball. Do you have a team and who you're rooting for to take it all the way?
Well, it's so funny that you asked this. I'm excited about March Madness. I don't have a particular team. I'm a Big 12 fan. I enjoy watching hoops from the Big 12 just because I think they're the best conference in basketball, and then I covered the Big 12 for a long time, so I'm very familiar with the programs there. But I was watching I was watching the tournament or the conference tournaments over the weekend, and that Pac-12 championship. Man, I was just locked in on that UCLA and Arizona. I thought that was fantastic. And so when I filled out my bracket, no joke, you're filling out your bracket. It seems like everything that you're doing is making sense. You're just going through, okay, boom, boom, boom. All right, I'm feeling good about this. I get to the end where we put the final 2 teams in, and I realize I have Arizona and UCLA. And I was like, oh, my goodness, this is not going to happen. There's no way that this is going to be a repeat. So I think that my brain was just in love with that Pac-12 championship game, and I was a victim of that. I was a prisoner of the moment. So I have UCLA cutting down the nets, winning the whole thing on my bracket, but that's guaranteed to get busted immediately.
Yeah.
So don't follow my lead. Don't become a victim of what you saw last. But I did, and that's how I filled out my bracket. But I got UCLA, but I'll tell you what, man, if anyone in the Big 12 makes some noise, I'll be happy. Like UT, I love what Rodney Terry's done there as the coach, taking over from Chris Beard. I thought that was great. Jerome Tang there at K-State, he comes over from Baylor. He's the guy. And Scott Drew, I always got a lot of love for right there with the Baylor Bears. So there you go. There's a few of my little shout-outs that I got for the March Madness tournament coming up.
Well, Caden and I were just talking a little bit earlier. We both feel a little bit dirty because we have a football school winning the national championship. I've got Bama, and so does Caden.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yep. No,
I'm not a Bama fan, but I did it.
I could see that, though. I could see that. You want to talk about a mentally tough team? Jeez, they've got some mental toughness with everything that they got going off the court, and Brandon Miller in particular. I mean, that I guarantee every NBA team is looking at him like, yeah, we'd love to have him. That dude, he don't flinch. He's got all the mental toughness in the world. I could see Alabama definitely winning it all. I don't know how celebrated it would be outside of Alabama, but I could definitely see him taking the whole thing.
I agree. Q, thanks for hopping on with us today. We're always grateful to talk to you and learn more about what's going on with the Raiders from your point of view.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys.
Yep. Okay, have a good one, and we're going to take a break as well. We'll be back with more after this.